It is my honor to present the outcomes of the project Jean Monnet Center of Excellence on European Security and Disinformation in Multicultural Societies. So we started this journey almost 3 years ago. Well, actually 3 years without 1 month, because next month we will end the project. And at the time we talked about the project, we said, okay, what we should study and why? And at that point, which was, around the pandemic, we saw that disinformation is getting a lot of attention, either we like it or not, because we were all subject to it. Either we like it or not. We could open the social media, maybe even mass media, and we can see false information spread around to induce a certain reaction. So we said, okay, disinformation will get bigger and bigger as a phenomenon, and it's a security problem. So we should focus ourselves on disinformation. One other thing that happened around that time frame, which, let's say, help us shape the object of the problem, was the Ditrău case in Romania, in which, in a community, we had some 3 people from Sri Lanka coming, and the community almost muted against the 3 foreigners that came to work in that community. Let's say, the debate that was organized by the authorities, there were certain phrases that were used a lot during the migration crisis. So, even though we had no problem with the migration crisis because it happened less on Romanian soil, we can see that the seeds of the information and ideas that were planted during that time frame in other countries resurfaced in Romania in a small community. So we have a very big impact and a transnational impact on disinformation. So this is why we decided that we should talk about how European security is being developed and how disinformation affects the European security, and more, the border states, the states that are at the limes, as the Romans said, of the European security. Afterwards, the war in Ukraine broke, and we can saw that disinformation is getting even bigger and bigger and becomes even a bigger threat to national security. And if we see the last elections in Romania, we discovered somehow that we have disinformation and that disinformation can affect the democratic processes. Well, even though we talk and we had many conferences and summer schools and other type of activities, and we talked about the effects that disinformation can have on the national security and the democratic process, well, we discovered it only a few months ago at national level, and we discovered that we can have troll factories. And this is a big problem, because we should always see how we can help to erase security and not address the security problems as they happen. As we know, in Romania, the presidential elections were stopped while the process was developing, because there were interference, or at least this is what they said. They discovered Russian interference through disinformation and social media campaigns. So we see that what we thought about at the beginning, when the project was defined, has a really big impact almost 4 years afterwards. What we are doing, we were set to develop a research aspect, let's say a research module on the conference, on the project, on impact in the society, part of the project, and there we had the podcast and an interaction with the youngs through different activities that were meant to raise the awareness about what EU is doing for them and how disinformation can affect their lives. when it comes to events, we had many events, two summer school, two conferences, international conferences, and several events for students. We are so happy to have a development, let's say, in the European studies and security studies at the University of Târgu Mureș. And it started with the security study programs that was developed in 2019 and the research projects and events that we are developing right now. From the events we organized, I would like to recall the summer school from 2022, where we talked about the transnational effects of disinformation. Several students participated, more than 30 actually, from Romania, from Poland, and from the Republic of Moldova. And here I want to thank Cristina Morari, who is also part of the project, from the State University of Moldova, who supported us in this project and throughout the project. Also, we had another summer school in 2023. This time we went at Bucharest and we visited several national institutions involved in forming and implementing security policies at a national level. So this was a very interesting experience for our students, but not only our students, because there were participants from different Romanian universities. Because they had the chance to interact with the persons that are defining national security policies and to ask direct questions. Also last year, we had on the 9th of May, the European Union Day, an international conference that was opened by the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cristian Diaconescu, and had more than 50 participants from around the world. From these conferences and activities, we have a research outcome, 4 books that were published following these activities. The first one, Disinformation Crossing Border, the multi-layered disinformation concerning the war in Ukraine. And here we tried to see how disinformation concerning the war is crossing borders and is not necessarily has a local impact, and more we focused on Eastern Europe, of course, which was more affected and saw the war getting near their border. So European states in this area had to deal with a certain type of disinformation, and sometimes this type of disinformation used ideas that were promoted during the communist regimes. So it has a very specific target when it comes to forming or formulating the ideas that are being used afterwards in disinformation campaigns. Afterwards, we had redefining European security in a post-COVID-19 world. Here we try to see how the world after the pandemic changed its shape, and if the security environment is indeed different or not. Because we can recall that after the pandemic and during the pandemic, everybody said, well, the world is not going to be the same. Everything will change. So we wanted to see how these perspectives or how things changed in the security environment. Afterwards, we had the EU Security and Multicultural Society dealings with the Russian Empire revival as an outcome of the summer school. In this book, we tried to emphasize that we are no longer talking about the European security and the security of the countries within the EU as we did several years ago, like 10, 15 years ago, because Russia changed its narrative a lot and started to implement measures to, let's say, to increase its power in the region. Well, as history taught us, it did it through military means, to violent means, not through necessarily negotiation. And thus, we have now the war in Ukraine. And the last conference, Resilient Multicultural Societies in Face of Hybrid Threats. This conference is focused on hybrid threats and the outcome, the scientific papers also, because even though maybe we don't feel as much those hybrid threats, it's not like somebody's pointing a gun at you or they have tanks on your country, on the soil of your country. Things are going on in another level, and maybe we don't feel it at the beginning, but or states cannot pinpoint them at the beginning, but when they have the cumulative effects they have, the risks through national security, it's really big. And we could see this in the Romanian election. Again, annulling the electoral process, it's an outstanding measure, and it was done because of security reasons that affect hybrid war, because those are parts of hybrid war that affect national security. In total, the members of the project published more than 50 papers, research papers, in those books, in other books, or in scientific papers in international recognized journals with impact factors. So I think from this point of view, the spread of the project was considerable. There are two specific actions that were developed with the students or with pupils from Mureș country, but not necessarily on local level. My Europe, it is a student competition that had 3 editions. More than 150 students participated in this competition from 5 countries, so it had an international dimensions. And they should present an essay or a photo showing how they perceive the influence of the European Union in their local communities. And from this project, a collection of photos and essays was generated, and an exhibition with, well, the most important work was developed. Also, it is the My EU Future EU for Youth Opportunities activity, which was developed during 3 years, of course, but the outcome was actually for us a surprise. In the project, we had an impact of 250 pupils and students participating in these activities, but we reached the mark of 1,000 students. And not necessarily because we wanted to be really ambitious in presenting and implementing the project, but because schools, high schools in Târgu Mureș and not only, asked us to come back because the other pupils heard from their colleagues about the presentation and they wanted to know more about what we said. What we were presenting were the financing opportunities that the European Union is offering students and pupils and how they can access them. So if we reach the 1,000 mark, that means that is a real need to increase in schools information about the European Union and what the European Union, what belonging to the European Union, what are the advantages of belonging to the European Union. Another activity we had is EU Myth and Realities is a podcast we developed. Actually, it has a really big impact if we gather all the 36 episodes. We focused on specific things. It was about addressing the main themes of disinformation that we can identify at a certain point. Actually, the podcast was nominalized in the national media as a unique, and it was a unique, activity developed by a university to raise awareness about what European Union means and how their institutions affect the activities of every one of us, because during the European election, European Parliament election, we had a weekly presentation about what the European Union is and how we are represented in the European Union bodies. And of course, what we can do or we cannot do there. So we tried through this podcast, we try to, let's say, bust the myth that the European Union is imposing us to do, that we can hear a lot. European Union is asking us to do that, and we have nothing else to do, we have to implement them. Even though we are represented in the European Union, we have the same right to vote as other European countries, and we are the sixth state in the European Parliament as numbers of European representatives. So we are not a small country. Others cannot come to tell us necessarily, you have to do that and you have no voice in the European Union. This is a myth we wanted to address because it's used a lot, not only in media, but also in the political field. And we are now here, Resilient Multicultural Societies in Face of Hybrid Threats. This is the last conference of the project. It's the, let's say, concluding conference. Well, why resilient multicultural societies in face of hybrid threats? Because multicultural societies have specific needs and are specifically vulnerable when we come to hybrid threats, and especially disinformation. Nowadays, we are talking in Romania about redefining, let's say, the administrative structure from counties to cities and so on and so forth. But this raises a lot of questions in multicultural societies where there are certain sensibilities. And this can be used to generate a certain type of reaction. So if we don't have enough information and if we don't develop the right means of communication, we can have a certain type of resistance generated merely by let's say, weak presentation or a weak form of communication. The way the government will communicate and will disseminate information about this will be crucial for generating a consensus and also for helping the citizen understand the needs to, let's say, reshape the administrative structures in Romania, and that these are not targeted to, I don't know, specific multicultural aspects, but to administrative needs. I will end my presentation with a quote from a poem from Mihai Eminescu, and I know that our colleagues from the Republic of Moldova are also online, and I would like to salute them, because they highly regard Mihai Eminescu as a poet also. Yesterday we celebrated 175 years from its birth, and well, it is a national poet from Romania, and I selected a part from one of its poems that I think that it's applicable to what security means. It's part of the poem Glosa, and because it is in English there, I will say it in Romanian for our colleagues also from the Republic of Moldova. Vreme trece, vreme vine, toate-s noi și nouă-s toate, ce e rău și ce e bine tu te întreabă și socoate, nu spera și nu ai teamă, ce val, ca valul trece, te îndeamnă de te cheamă, tu rămâi la toate rece. And we know in the international environment that security problems raise and they go away, and then other comes and they will go away, but the difference is on how we address them. So even though the time goes by, even though history teaches us a lot of things, what we should do in the international environment is to address them timely and correctly so that we can have a safe way of living. Thank you so much.
Vous parlez en français pour vous donner mon impression en tant que partenaire, ami et collègue de Michaela, de Simeon, de l'Université de Târgu Mureș, avec qui je travaille depuis plusieurs années. On a publié plusieurs ouvrages. Et le professeur Sémion a préfacé mon dernier ouvrage sur la franc-maçonnerie en Tunisie. C'est un sujet complexe, la franc-maçonnerie, c'est un sujet passionnant aussi, c'est un sujet à risque. Mais on a assumé ce risque-là et on a ensemble produit cet ouvrage qui a eu un succès, en tout cas intellectuel, pas commercial, mais intellectuel auprès des chercheurs, des étudiants tunisiens. Donc, comme toujours, always, je suis ravi d'être à Târgu Mureș. Je suis ravi parce que ça fait des souvenirs. Ça fait, je pense, depuis plus que 10 ans, je parle des étudiants, vous étiez encore au collège. Et nous, on était dans cette salle, on était dans les salles à côté pour produire, pour collaborer ensemble et pour faire avancer les recherches. Avancer les recherches, mais aussi la coopération entre nos deux universités, nos deux pays aussi. Moi, j'ai cette chance d'être tunisien et français. C'est-à-dire, je travaille sur l'histoire tunisienne, parce que c'est mon pays d'origine, mais je travaille sur la sociologie de la société française. C'est-à-dire, j'essaie de compléter mes travaux, c'est-à-dire dans les deux pays, quoi. Et bien évidemment, je travaille avec Michaela, je travaille avec Simeon depuis plusieurs années, et cette contribution, cette collaboration a abouti à des conventions avec des universités tunisiennes. C'est pour vous, ces conventions, pour que vous pouvez vous déplacer, aller étudier en Tunisie, aller faire vos stages en Tunisie. Et c'est un très beau pays, la Tunisie. Je ne suis pas un agent touristique, je ne suis pas un agent du tourisme tunisien, mais je vous promets que vous allez avoir un bon accueil auprès des autorités tunisiennes, auprès des universitaires et des étudiants tunisiens. Donc, on a déjà signé en 2019, ça veut dire avant le Covid, une convention d'échange avec l'université de Sfax. C'est la deuxième ville en Tunisie. Et ces derniers jours, ces dernières semaines, nous avons signé une autre convention avec l'université de Sousse, la faculté de lettres de Sousse. Et cette convention va permettre aux collègues, dans le cadre de Erasmus, de se déplacer, d'échanger et de passer vos stages. On va préparer une autre convention avec l'Institut national de l'histoire contemporaine de la Tunisie, qui se trouve à Tunis. Vous voyez, ça veut dire que vous allez traverser la Tunisie. Sfax, c'est relativement dans le sud. Sousse, c'est une ville côtière. Et Tunis, bien évidemment, c'est la capitale. Toutes ces conventions, toutes ces tentatives et ces efforts pour aider à travailler ensemble, à faire des recherches ensemble et promouvoir la solidarité entre les étudiants et entre les collègues. Vous savez, je suis historien. Un historien engagé, c'est-à-dire dans le sens engagé, ça veut dire c'est une histoire critique que je propose. Il ne suffit pas d'empiler les connaissances, non, c'est des connaissances apporter des connaissances critiques. Le métier, entre guillemets, de professeur, actuellement, dans les temps qui courent, est un métier, est une profession compliquée, difficile. Pourquoi c'est une profession difficile? Parce qu'on demande à l'historien de répondre à des questions sociales, à des questions sociétales. Il est expert, on demande de donner son avis sur la justice, sur la mémoire, sur les mémoires et sur les problèmes sociaux. Il est très sollicité par les médias, sollicité par les tribunaux, la justice, et c'est-à-dire on lui demande en tant qu'expert, entre guillemets, de donner son avis, de donner des solutions, des réponses. Or, ce n'est pas le rôle de l'historien. L'historien essaye d'expliquer et le passé pour comprendre le présent. Ça veut dire que il a un rôle, il est de passeur de mémoire. Et en même temps, il est un réparateur des torts qu'on fait à des mémoires oubliées. Parce qu'en France, il y a des mémoires. Et ces mémoires ont été occultées par un regard, je dirais, très nationaliste de l'histoire. Ça veut dire que l'histoire en France, elle tourne autour de l'homme blanc, du catholique, mais jamais auprès des minorités. Les minorités sont exclues de cette histoire. Or, ces minorités veulent revenir à dire que cette France, c'est ces France, au pluriel, cousues ensemble, faites et construites ensemble. On a l'histoire de l'esclavage, on a l'histoire coloniale, on a la participation des soldats coloniaux dans la Première et la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Malheureusement, ces événements sont occultés, sont parfois rejetés par l'histoire nationale, qui ne laisse pas de place à des étrangers, qui ne laisse pas de place à des minorités. Ces minorités se révoltent. Ils exigent des pages de l'histoire nationale, puisque c'est une histoire commune, puisque c'est une histoire partagée. Ce qui fait qu'il y a une forme de guerre de mémoire, une querelle de mémoire. Or, la situation est inquiétante. Les hommes politiques n'aiment pas les historiens parce que les historiens disent le vrai, ne cherchent pas la démagogie. Donc, ce que nous souhaitons, c'est l'apaisement. L'apaisement pour un vivre ensemble, pour une vie, comment dirais-je, une histoire partagée. C'est ce qu'ils ont fait, les Français, avec les Allemands. Ils ont réécrit des manuels scolaires pour les lycéens. Longtemps, l'histoire franco-allemande était une histoire compliquée, faite de revanche, de haine, de mépris. Les historiens de deux côtés se sont réunis pour dire basta. Il y a eu la première guerre franco-allemande en 1871, après la Première Guerre mondiale, et ensuite la Seconde. Donc, il y a beaucoup de morts, il y a beaucoup de sang entre les Allemands et les Français. Et ils ont réussi à apaiser les choses. Et Michal est mieux placé pour vous parler de la construction européenne autour de ces deux piliers, à savoir l'Allemagne et la France. Nous, les historiens du Sud, de l'autre rive, nous demandons qu'on écrive l'histoire coloniale, l'histoire de l'immigration à deux, et non pas seulement les Français ou seulement les Africains. C'est un travail qui doit se faire à deux pour aider l'autre à comprendre, pour aider l'autre à mieux respecter cette histoire africaine qui était longtemps ignorée. Donc, au final, nous les universitaires, nous les chercheurs, Madame Rouag d'Algérie, Simeon, Michel et les collègues ici, nous avons une tâche très, très délicate, à savoir rapprocher les peuples, rapprocher les étudiants, rapprocher les recherches dans un cadre solidaire. Et le but, c'est pas nous. Le but, c'est vous. C'est se projeter sur l'avenir pour établir des relations de confiance, et ça passe par l'intelligence. Le souci, c'est quoi? Lorsqu'on parle de choc des civilisations, il n'y a pas de choc des civilisations. Il y a choc des ignorances. Lorsqu'on ne se connaît pas, on a des difficultés à se comprendre. Nous comptons sur vous, parce que c'est vous l'avenir. You are the future. Me, I'm old. Ça veut dire que je suis près de la porte de sortie. C'est à vous, c'est pour vous qu'on essaye de construire quelque chose en commun. C'est pour vous, en tant que citoyens, que nous préparons des conventions et des rencontres